present to you this film around the $1 Million Cage by Represent Justice. And so I'll first tell you a little bit about YJAM. So YJAM was started as Youth Justice Action Month, and it was started back in 2008 by a parent whose child actually committed suicide after being imprisoned in an adult facility. And so initially it started out around awareness around the harms of trying children as adults. But then it expanded to sort of encompass all youth justice issues and spreading awareness around the harms of the youth legal system. And then in 2018, I believe, here are my notes, 2016, it was changed to Youth Justice Action Month. And it was changed because we wanted to encourage folks to take action, to actually do something. So we've been spreading awareness, but we actually want folks to take a step towards disrupting and dismantling these harmful systems. And so a few years ago, NJJN and the Coalition for Juvenile Justice took on the charge to kind of continue Youth Justice Action Month and encourage our members and advocates all across the country to participate in Youth Justice Action Month in October, which brings me to our event today that we have with the Players Coalition and Represent Justice. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Monse to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about Represent Justice.
Thank you, Tracy. Hi, y'all. Thank you so much for being here with us today to watch this film and hear Kent and Kyndra's insights. I'm Monse Reyes. I'm the Ambassador Program Manager for Represent Justice. We're a nonprofit org that's dedicated to telling stories about the criminal legal system and people who are impacted by it, stories that center their voices and their perspectives. Part of our work is around doing impact campaigns for films and series that have to do with the criminal legal system. Then the other part of our work is a training program where we have formerly incarcerated leaders and advocates from across the country join us for a year-long cohort where they learn about storytelling and develop the skills to be able to use storytelling to advance change in their communities. And Kent is one of our ambassadors, and we were really honored to be able to make this film alongside him and Kyndra and really kind of follow Kent for a time as he's organizing in LA County and trying to really bring about change in their youth justice system. Thank you.
Thanks, Monse. And I'll bring Tremaine in to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about the Players Coalition.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tracy. Hello, everyone. My name is Tremaine Davis. I'm representing as an education expert for the Players Coalition. Players Coalition is structured as an independent 501c3 charity and a 501c4 advocacy organization. We're working with over 1,400 professional student athletes, coaches, owners across leagues to improve social justice and racial equality in our country. We were founded in 2017 by Anquan Bolden, as well as Malcolm Jenkins, and 11 other voting members for Players Coalition. We continue to grow with ambassadors, making an impact throughout our country with social justice and racial equality in all three levels of federal, state, local levels as well. Our main goal is to ensure that anyone who has the platform to make an impact will do just that, make an impact with their platform. Currently, the Players Coalition's involvement spans across the NFL, the NBA, the WNBA, the MLB, the MLS, NWSL, USL, the PLL, and the MLL, and of course the MMA. And I'm very excited to be here with you all today. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Tremaine. And with that, I'll introduce both Kent and Kyndra, who are going to be our panelists after we view the film today. So Kent Mendoza is a Represent Justice Ambassador. He is a youth justice expert, mentor, community organizer, activist, artist, writer, motivational speaker, and filmmaker. He is the Associate Director of Advocacy and Community Organizing at the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, where he first started off as the Member and Community Engagement Coordinator in 2016. He worked with the W. Hayward Burns Institute on the publishing and implementation of LA County's Youth Justice Reimagined and Division of Juvenile Justice Alternative Team reports, and a vision that led to the first ever Department of Youth Development in 2020. Lastly, Kent is a Represent Justice alumni and filmmaker of two films, short animated film title, Chasing the Mexican Dream, and a short documentary about his life and work, $1 Million Cage, which we'll see in a bit. Kyndra Kennedy is the director and founder of Kyna Media Films. Kyndra Kennedy is a writer, director, and owner of Kyna Media Films, an independent film production company based in Los Angeles, California. They've won international film festivals for their work, and it's been streamed over 100 million times. From short narratives to documentaries, they tell stories that amplify the voices of people of color, women, and underrepresented communities. And so with that, I believe we're going to go on into the film. Monse, I'll turn it over to you. And welcome everyone. We have Kent and the director of the film, Kyndra Kennedy, joining us today. If you all have questions you'd like to ask them, we ask that you just place them in the chat, and we'll do our best to kind of incorporate them as we go along. Kent, thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing your story with us and the world through this film. We entitled the conversation today, Justice is Authorship, to uplift the importance of owning one's own story and agency, not just the public telling of our stories for advocacy, but also the internal process of understanding who we are outside of what oppressive narratives or systems may say about us. Is there a time that you can remember when you started to feel like you became the author of your own story and you weren't operating off of what society or the legal systems were trying to tell the world about you?
Yes, thank you. And once again, thanks everybody for being able to join today and watch the film. I think this is a good question. I would say, while I was incarcerated, I've always thought that I had to live up to the realities that I was living in, right? Poverty, being in a gang, and being that person. And I think while I was incarcerated, reading books of historic great leaders, like Nelson Mandela, Pancho Villa, Zapata, uh, Martin Luther King, all the leaders they had an impact in our world, and somehow, learning about them and, really. And then, when I was about to get released, being able to tell my story to the ICE agent, it really, all those things allow me to own my story and own it in the way that I want it to be owned. And also, I used that also to help me come home, and I think that, it took me being self-educated, unfortunately, under some difficult circumstances, like in the film showing the cage and incarcerated, but, it really was me being able to learn from other people that had civically involved themselves in the world for the better, for ending oppressions in their own versions. And for me, that really led to me to tell my own story, own it up like I know how to be on it, and, not let someone else tell it for me, not let the record, the transcripts, the police and the people be the ones that tell my story, but be myself. And that is what allowed me to own my story and being able to own it when ICE detention came about. And that really is what got me home. And ever since then, my story has, allowed me to really be used for the better. So I would say that it's unfortunate that it happened while I was incarcerated, but, learning from other people, great leaders, is what really allowed me to own my story in the way that made sense, and changing these types of systems that I went through and other kids are going through.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Kent. Kyndra, as the director of this film, did the process of creating the project stand out or differ from the other projects that you've worked on? If so, tell us how.
Yes, thank you for having me. And absolutely, this film stood out. This project stood out to me because it was the first time that I got to tell a story that not only impacts my community, my people, but it impacted me personally. I know what it feels like to be a friend, a family member of someone who's been in this system and system impacted. And part of these like harmful stereotypes and these labels, they create this idea of guilt and shame, and they really silence the people, not only who are system impacted, but this feeling of guilt and shame and silence is transferred to the family and the friends of people who are going through this, and it's really isolating. And I know I know what it feels like to be dehumanized and go when I'm going to visit someone that I love who's behind bars, and what that does to a mother, what that does to their sister and their brother and the people that love them. Um, and then how they feel in society, where it's like they don't get to complain. They don't have any rights. They deserve to suffer. Shame on you. And it's just this like secret society of just pain. So the opportunity to be able to shine light on real people, someone from my community who I get to tell his story, but there's also this uplifting side of it where he was able to transform his life. And it's not because of the facilities, it's because of these programs and these people who, despite these facilities, they're clawing in to get to these people and to save lives. And I wanted to be a part of that. So yes, this was the first time I got to speak up about something that I've gone through. I had to, pull the wire out of my bra because by my mistake, I tried to go visit my friend with a wire in my bra, and I had to like rip my bra apart just to go in and visit him. And then I can't, just this fear. They have a little button to detect if I was touching any drugs or illegal substances, which was known for giving a lot of false positives. So we all had this anxiety and this fear that if you touch this button when you go to visit them, you have to and if it turns red, you have to submit yourself to a strip search. And I remember my friend telling us, hey, if that ever happens to you, do not come see me. Just go home. I do not want my mother and my girlfriend and my friends to have to be submitted to a strip search just to come see me. So it's just this reality that no one really knows about, again, because these labels won't let you have compassion for people. These criminal defendant, whatever, gang member, all of these things mean you deserve to suffer, and you deserve to be dehumanized. So that's why this stood out to me, because I was so passionate about it.
Thank you for that, Kyndra. And just the film really does emphasize the impact that it has on the entire family. Just going a little deeper, could you tell us a little bit about the process and how it differed from other projects? Oh, I'm sorry. What did you learn when making this film that helped you with other projects, or that could be important for other filmmakers when working on projects like this, and how to honor authorship and agency, and why that's so important?
Oh, I would give advice to filmmakers and to myself, something that I've learned, how important it is to fully and truly give agency over and power and authorship to their own stories, that we have to make sure when including supportive voices, because there's other advocates and there's a lot of people involved in this fight that have never been system impacted. And so that we have to be very delicate and certain that when we're bringing in these supportive voices, that they're not actually overshadowing the story, because what we don't want to do is create that tokenism and that mascot out of Kent for some sound bites. And I also call it avoid soundbite chasing, trying to put words in their mouths and have them express their own story in words that they wouldn't necessarily use. So avoid that need. Don't try to get that flashy sentence and soundbite for the sake of filmmaking, but let them actually author and use their own voice and their own words to express their experience. And that's how we can really center their voice. And someone like Kent, who's often telling his story in a shared space, and he has other advocates, and sometimes he's timed. He has to get everything out in 1 minute or 2 minutes, and it's just, there's no time to really humanize him in those moments. So when we're creating this documentary, this is his time to be uninterrupted. There's no time, just tell us your story. And through a visual medium, I get to show you pictures of Kent before incarceration. You get to see his mother and his sister who got choked up because they've never been asked like what it's like to have your little brother be taken from you, be taken from your family, what it's like navigating the legal process and with a language barrier. So being a child with a language barrier, parents have a language barrier. No one gets to know this when you label them, and when Kent has 1 minute to say everything he wants to say. So this is that time to really center his voice, give him a chance to not be interrupted, not have other voices overshadow his, but make sure all those voices are just supporting the story. And I hope we were able to do that effectively.
Thank you, Kyndra. And with that, I'd like to bring Tremaine into the conversation to ask questions.
Yes, thank you very much. This is for Kent. As a coalition of professional athletes, we live in a world of narrative and storytelling all the time. And so topics of justice, authorship, agency, being able to navigate your own story in your own terms becomes really important. So with that being said, I wanted to know what narratives do you hope this film can help push back or debunk about incarcerated or formerly incarcerated young people?
Thank you again, and that's another great question. I think I'll start with the title of the film, right? It's called $1 Million Cage. I think originally, we were looking around $1 million youth, right? But the reality is that it's not about, it's the facilities, right? It's the conditions, these places we're trying to really focus on our attention to. So I think that, what we're trying to do is that, through this film, we're trying to keep it real with the public, that it's not the young people that are somehow just born and are like destined to become bad or criminals or none of that, right? I think that what we're trying to really highlight in this film is really challenge that narrative that has been put out there for many, many decades, started since the war on crime and, since the harsh on laws policies back in the days, right? In the 90s and in the 80s. So it's like, this is really more trying to change the narrative. It's the systems that we have in place that have been rooted for so long with punitive approaches, only punitive approaches because we don't really focus on the real issue. We don't focus on the solution, which is youth development, and what really is the issue, which is the systems that we're putting kids into. And we're putting them into places where you're isolated. You have to knock to use the restroom. You have to sleep with no shoes in your room. Like there's things, ways that we're expecting somehow for young people to be great, successful individuals and change their lives around, change their thinking around. But yet again, we're putting them in an environment where that is even impossible to happen. So it's more about challenging the narrative that kids are born bad, specifically Black and brown youth who have the highest rate of incarceration in California right here. And, the ones that make up the system, right, from poor communities. So it's just more, we really want to debunk all those things that the young people are born to be these types of individuals as teenagers, specifically Black and brown youth. It's more about talking about the systems that are in place, failures of different systems that are failing kids all around. That is just literally, we're in a cycle of insanity where we're not really fixing the system. We're just trying to put tapes all around it. And you've seen people like me, they have to go through things like that, right? I'm just one of thousands of young people, hundreds of them, so 100,000 of them. So, it's just more challenging that narrative, that this is about shifting the focus on where it needs to be shifted, on the institution, the facilities, where it's rooted, and really uplifting what should be uplifted, which is the young persons, their potential, their humanity, and their development. At the end, we don't fully develop until we're 25 years old, 26. We still make horrible decisions at 19, 20, 21. You're all being those ages, you know yourself at that, especially if you're poor, Black and brown in communities where you're more likely gonna get pulled over by the police. You know, even now that I've been a changed individual, I've been pulled over by police. I don't even do none of those things. But guess what? That's just the reality of our communities.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And again, thank you so much for sharing your story. Kyndra, thank you so much for capturing the story. This has been incredible.
Thanks. I feel like we had a few questions in the chat there. I hope Kent and Kyndra, you're able to see the comments as well. A lot of praise for you all in the film. One question I saw, I was trying to find, had to do with how we can share the film and share the film with others. And then the other, let's see. Oh, what were some of the most difficult parts about making the film? And I imagine, I don't know if both Kent or Kyndra would like to answer.
I'll kick it off and I'll pass it to Kyndra. I think for the one or what question was around the filming, right? Making the filming, right? I think
What were some of the most difficult parts? Yes.
okay, yeah, because I see a bunch I think the most difficult part was to be honest, I feel like because I've talked so much already in my lifetime since I've been home for 10 years doing advocacy at the state, federal, and local level, it wasn't hard for me. I think it was probably more the process. It was hard because there was times where we will start at certain times and we will end up doing recording for like hours and putting in a lot of work for things that sometimes don't even come up in the film, right? You only got to watch 35 minutes of the film, but in reality, there was at least over 100, uh, uh, an hour, over 60 minutes of film if we really wanted to watch an hour and like something minutes, you know, it was long. So I think the hardest part was that knowing that we're gonna put a lot of work to it, but maybe we will not see all of it into reality. You know, for me as someone that just started this, maybe for Kendra's other challenges, but I think that was the challenge, and I think just there was no real challenge for me. I think it was more of it was a good experience because it really, like I mentioned in the past in other conversations, it really allowed me to explore my story and break it down in ways that where it's like you step back, you see the story right here laying in front of you, and then you're seeing what you're picking to make this film. But it's just kind of like a therapeutic process at the same time. So I would say nothing really challenges, more of the process for me of like hours that we had to put in work and stuff like that. But I'll pass it to Kendra because I'm sure she has other challenges.
Actually, I would piggyback off of that as for the editing part of making this film, I would say would be the most challenging because that's when we had to prioritize the messaging and really cut back on things that I believe we all thought were really powerful, but for runtime constraints, we had to really focus the story. And we couldn't get everything in there. And we spoke to so many people that I really feel like there's a longer and larger story behind this. Really having an opportunity to talk to other advocates and other programs and just see the people and the faces of people who are willing to dedicate their time and their resources, who aren't properly funded, but they find time to go inside and work with people and save lives. And I thought their stories were so powerful. And so for me, it was really hard not getting everybody in there and not letting us see all these amazing advocates and people who are really doing the work and putting up a fight.
See another question I could answer right here. There's one that says about what narrative do you well, I think we answered that, but I wanted to add something around the narrative that we're trying to push or what more around that because I feel like I think a lot of things that we do, a lot of times what we do in the movement, when I say the movement, the criminal justice movement and juvenile justice movement, is that we're always just, our targeted audience is always the same audience. It's always the same people that already are like on our side, right? The people in our, and I feel like for us, at least for me and for, I think, it's like, I also feel like this film is also intended to not just do that, but also start opening the mindsets of people that don't like none of this stuff, right? Like, what I do in my everyday work is I do civic engagement, right? I work with a lot of youth and young adults who have come home from incarceration, and I try to engage them so they could be inspiration, and those people that really get to the politicians, that they're the ones that set the policy at the local, state, and federal level, the ones that pass laws, right? And get to their hearts and minds through storytelling, through civic engagement, right? Like, this is what I feel former incarcerated people are good at, because we have ammunition, and that's our stories, authentic information about this system that we're always trying to change, and we're always trying to, and I feel like, yeah, I think I forgot what the heck I was trying to get to, but you guys, I think y'all get what I'm trying to say here, right? And
Absolutely.
I would love
right,
to add to that too, about like the type of narrative change that I think we need, and what I would love for people to pull away, not just from this film, but any film about in system impacted people. And it's this idea that I feel like it's a real culture change in society, is this idea that people who commit offenses deserve to suffer. We have to really just, face the fact that, through suffering, these long sentences, it does not, and this is what Kent was saying, it does not result in positive change. It does not result in people who re-enter society and want to be a positive contributor. And we have to understand that the system that we have in place is just not effective. It's harmful, it's traumatic. And we need to really get the public to also join in accountability, that it takes a village to raise a child, and we need to have pride in being that village. We need to invest in the village. We need to have pride in our resources and professionals and programs that do everything within its power to keep our children out of this justice system, because it doesn't work. And it can work, but we have to change that. The people on the outside who aren't impacted have to know, you don't want people to just suffer these long-term systems. It costs a lot of money and it serves no one.
Thank you. There's one other question in the chat I'd like to ask you before I turn it over to Monse. What advice would you give young people who are on the front lines for change, but feel as though their voices aren't heard?
I would say for me, I mean, I work with former incarcerated youth strictly, right? And I say that not like to, because there's my job has always been to be the voice and representation of those that have served time, been locked up, right? And that means youth and young adults. So I would say that we have to figure out how to just center, if we're talking about issues around incarceration, right? About conditions, or there's a project that is being worked that is going to lead to real policy change around that population. I feel like we all, as people that are passionate for this work, we got to make sure we're centering the right voices and the right perspectives for those types of things. Because if we don't, we end up doing what we don't want to do, which is tokenizing on people or doing it for them. And when I say with that, right, if we have a project, right, or something we're trying to change, and it's literally going to impact the lives of people that are in jail, like those kids that are probably charged with the most severe offenses and they have to be in place. We will want to engage and center the individuals that have gone through those similar experiences, right? And that be former incarcerated youth. You wouldn't want to engage young people that never really were incarcerated. It's not that you're excluding, but you're trying to ensure that you're getting the voices that need to be voiced, and trying to get the authentic information for that particular issue, right? So you're really trying to get to the root cause of it, but at the same time trying to come with the best possible solution for that issue that is going to impact that exact population. So I would say it's really being more intentional how we're engaging, on what topics, who we're engaging, and giving room to those that are, at least for the former incarcerated. Just know that whenever you work in former incarcerated, if it's in a campaign, a coalition, the former incarcerated people are more likely not going to be the ones that are going to speak a lot in those meetings, are going to be more quiet, are going to be more not, you're going to need a little more pushing because they're former incarcerated, and we're more likely going to be the ones that are not going to say much, or especially if you're recently released, it's hard, it's easier to hear those people with academia, people that never been locked up, because they are more outspoken, more confident in spaces. So just being aware of those little things, so we're not excluding voices, especially people that have been impacted by system that it's some of them, it's hard for them to be presently engaging in these types of meetings consistently for years, just like how lawyers do, the way it's just those things. So, and I would say for young people, it's just to it's the misconception saying that we're trying to make them, when we say change, when we're telling a young person to live differently, change your life, we're not telling them that they have to walk a straight line. There's a misconception that when we tell them to change, that they have to be like straight nerds or like, I don't know, like walking a straight line. That doesn't mean change. You could still have fun and still have the great things that you want to do, but you don't have to do it through this culture that makes you think that you have, just challenging the culture. That's why in the film you said the real gangbanging, right? Like challenge the culture, like, I would, with the same stuff, flip the script, on the young people. I hope that made sense, but sorry about that.
Yeah, no, thank you. Monse, did you have questions for the panelists?
Yeah, thank you for that, Kent. Kind of following up on how to make space, how to like actually, what make space for formerly incarcerated folks in the stories that we're telling. I think we know that like stories like yours are so important to be able to change people's hearts and minds, to reach the folks who are opposed to change and to reform. But we also know that those stories can't be told if there isn't a baseline of trust between the person who's facilitating the storytelling and the storyteller, or the subject, the person that we really want to share their experience. And so I'm curious for both of you, Kent and Kyndra, if you could share a little bit more about how you approach storytelling through that lens. Like Kent, for you specifically, what is it that makes you trust somebody with your story? And Kyndra, for you, what are you thinking when you're trying to build trust and build a relationship with someone that you're working with?
Oh, okay. I didn't know who goes first. Okay. For me, it was important that Kent knew that this was his story that I was telling. I'm not telling his story for him. I'm shining light so that he can tell his own. And we were really collaborative throughout the whole process. He chose the people that we spoke to. He chose the questions that we asked everyone. Once we got into the editing process, he said, hey, if these particular sound bites taken out of context might show me in a light that I don't want to be shown in, or attach me to, a really extreme, a form of thought that I don't necessarily align with. So I created that space where he can tell me when it's time to edit, let me know what's working, what's not working. And he even called me at one point and said, man, they're doing the smear campaign. And I really need this documentary to come out soon. And so I had to make sure that if someone's out there saying things, spreading these lies, these fear tactics, does this message, does my film, rebuttal and debunk some of these ideas? And how do I show that? What do I think the audience needs to see, so that when they hear these words and when they hear these counter narratives, that does this do the job? Is this effective? And hearing things like systems. A lot of children get into the system based on failures in other systems. That's really important to hear, and people can start having that compassion, like, wow, we really dropped the ball when with a language barrier in Los Angeles, in the 90s. Somehow nobody bilingual was there to help Kent. And I think that's really on the education system. So things like that, where it's not just, sympathizing, but are there like actual facts that an audience can see that goes, whoa, I think we dropped the ball on this young man. And luckily for programs like ARC, they came and picked up the pieces and helped him rebuild. So you go from, I think, watching him go from having a language barrier to devouring books inside, books that someone from the outside had to bring into him. His mentors brought these books to him. They weren't given from these facilities. So it's really important to know that when he had access to these resources, he was able to change. And hopefully that shows the community through our story. It says, hey, look what happens when we provide, instead of $1 million cages, $1 million support systems, $1 million youth development approaches. And so that was where I hopefully built the trust. And then my job was to make sure I gave the audience what they needed to hear, to start dismantling these really hard, rigid views of the criminals and these menaces to society. Can I humanize Kent in 35 minutes?
Yeah, and I would say like I'm glad I'm glad Alexia joined this meeting. I don't know if you have seen Alexia in this meeting right here, but Alexia it's is one of the person that was featured in the film, one of the youth advocates in the film. And now Alexia works for the Department of Youth Development, which is what we were advocating for to be created in the county of LA County, right? Which is now a department that is functioning. And now she transitioned from being an advocate with working with me now to working with that department, which is that's exactly what we envision. And just to the reason I wanted to highlight that because I was trying to answer this question, as and based on what Kyndra was talking about, like while this film was already finished and everything was happening, because of all the work that we're doing in LA County around really creating this new vision of how we want to deal with young people, how we want to hold them accountable in the lenses of care and youth development, that has led people like myself and even Alexa, who's on this call, to be literally attacked by the same systems that we're trying to change, and I think that, it was, this film it came in perfect timing too, because as much as we are also the most vulnerable population in the movement, the formerly incarcerated people are, because we are the ones that have the past, the criminal convictions, maybe some of us are in articles, some of us came out in the news, all those things. We have the more to lose when it comes to being in the movement, right? And I feel like that's why we're very careful how we center certain people and who we're centering in these spaces, because we're a vulnerable population. But I think what this film also allows for people like me to do is, it allows me to tell my story the way I want it to be told, the way that the media is not going to tell it, the way this system that have access to our records are not going to tell it. And I think that another thing that I thought about is when I answered this question, I was a kid when everything that I was when I was incarcerated happened, so technically I don't need to talk about my incarceration because it's technically it didn't ever happen because I was a kid, even it's expunged. So there's also a way of how do I talk about my story, and I think this film did it well, where I talk about my story, but I share enough, but not too much. Where I don't need to go into details because it goes into like if I'm gonna be showing to a hearing next week to support a young person that is being tried for 25 years to life, and I'm trying to help him stay in the juvenile system, get the best outcome. All those things in the record can be used against you. So it's not knowing that. So I think that film allowed me to tell the story how I want to, own it how I want to, and debunk all those people that are trying to defame and slander myself and people like Alexia, who all of us are doing great work in the community. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question correctly, but yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to Alexia, who is on this call and who is one of the superstars as well as and the many other young adults that is out there doing great things. We're trying to change the narrative also by living up to those things by our everyday work. But yeah, and I'll pass it to Kyndra. I think you wanted to add something or say something.
Oh, yes. Hello, Alexia. What I also wanted to add was everyone that we interviewed, I told them you don't have to share the details of your case, that you share as much as you want to share, and just making sure that they didn't have to say anything that they didn't want to, because that's not what this was about. And I hope I created that safe space for them to share their stories. And because I thought it was more important to get a little sense of who they were before the system impacted them. And one question that I asked everyone that didn't make it in the film was, what did you want to be when you were younger? What did you aspire to be? And we did get those answers of, doctor, I wanted to be a firefighter, I wanted to be a soccer player, a rock star. And actually one of the youth said, I wanted to be a gangster. I wanted to be a thug because that's what I was surrounded by. And I was taken back because in my mind, the sound bites I was going to get was doctor, lawyer, all these, dream jobs. And he just kept it real. And I'm so glad it was just that learning moment for me. Like, see, I was chasing that soundbite, And then I ended up being blown away by the answer, not realizing that some of these youth never even had an opportunity to dream of something outside of their surroundings and who they saw. He said, I was surrounded and I looked up to my uncles and to my cousins, and that was the reality. And I'm so glad I didn't try to change that. I wish I could have got that in the film. There just wasn't time to share everyone's story.
Thank you, both Kent and Kyndra. I have this one last question. I'm not sure if you've maybe answered it somewhat along the ways, but I'll give you an opportunity to just sort of express if there's something else that you kind of want to get out there. The question is, did making this film change how you think about your own stories personally or in the work that you do, or if there's anything you'd like to kind of share, just as we're maybe about to wrap up?
This is for me and Kent?
It is for both of
Okay.
you. I'm sorry.
Kent, do you want to go first?
Yes. It's about how the film changed me. Is it right? That's the question.
Making the film change how you think about your own stories personally or in the work that you do. There's something
Yeah,
else.
I think it's just yeah, I like I said, I've been out for 10 years now. You know, I came home when I was 20 years of age. I'm 10 years out, so I feel like I have a whole new chapter of my life, you know, of my story, you know, that, and I feel like also, you know, it also made me, I think it's also a reminder to let people know that, you know, sometimes, you know, like when you look at this film and I'm telling the story of what happened, you know, now you don't see a 20-year-old kid, you see now an adult, you know, so and I think that navigating through those things and knowing that the story hasn't ended, there's more to be added. There's many ways that the story could have been told. It could have been focused just on immigration. It could have been focused just on the school to prison pipeline, you know, me being dealing with a lot of issues, you know, it could have, and I think they just made me understand that my story has a lot to offer, just like all of our stories have to offer a lot of things, you know, especially when you've touched many systems that fail, that don't work. There's many areas that I can focus on. It just, you know, allow me to see that I could pull from different areas of my story, for different types of expertise when it comes to like maybe what does it look like to have a real elementary experience. You know, I had a lot of issues in that. I could probably go into meetings and be an expert on that issue. I could probably go into just immigration. I could probably just go on brain development. I could probably just go into the real gang banging concept that I created, which is how do you flip the script, you know, make the young people motivated to be civically involved instead of gang banging, you know, or doing all those things. So it's like, after they just made me see that my story has a lot to offer and I could pull from different areas of my story. And this film just is just a glimpse to the many things that we can do with it.
Oh, this film definitely had a big change because it on my life and my career, because it really raised and set the bar for the type of impact I can make using my art. And not just for me, but my crew. A lot of my crew was very moved when they were hearing some of these interviews and the testimonies. They didn't really, I guess I didn't give them a background. I just told them to show up. And so they just were like blown away. And so to be able to do that for the filmmaking community, to have projects to be a part of, so they can really find their voice the way I found my voice as an advocate through filmmaking. Because, you know, while working on this film, I got a jury duty summons and I was kind of fired up. I was ready. I showed up, and during the jury selection process, I spoke my truth. I said, hey, I've been listening to hours of testimonies from people who are telling me that this, you know, the justice system is ineffective. And so I'm going to take my role as a jury member very seriously, when knowing that this Latino man that's standing in front of me from my community, that if I put him through this system, he might have a hard time coming back, and it might do a lot of harm and negatively impact his ability to contribute positively to our community. So I'm going to take this role very seriously. So I was very proud of myself. I was speaking. And when they came back from deliberating, I was the first person the prosecution asked to leave the jury. And so to me, this is a systemic problem because the system had an opportunity to put someone on the jury that saw this man as a human being, that labeled this man a member of my community. I was like, you're going to have to show me hard, cold evidence. No, I'm not just going to believe any police officer on the stand. I'm going to need to know why the victim herself changed her mind. I need to know why before I put this man in a system that's very hard to get out of once you're in it. And they asked me to leave. So there's a tip if you want to get out of jury duty. Say you're a justice reform advocate because they don't want you in there. And so to me, I'm going to have to use my voice in another way because they don't want me on juries. And filmmaking and really getting to the public in another way, I think is going to be the most effective. So yes, this changed my career in a way, and I want to continue to tell these stories. So hopefully that wasn't too long-winded.
No, that was beautiful. Thank you, Kent and Kyndra. And I know we only have a few minutes left. I just wanted to give an opportunity to just sort of go across the panel to just see if there are any final calls to action as we continue, youth justice movement, right? It's Youth Justice Action Month, but we want to continue to push for reforms and change and disrupt and dismantle the system. So if there are any final calls to action you'd like to make before we hop off, I'd like to give you the opportunity to do that.
There's always a call to action when you're an advocate. I would say, for all of you in this call, I would say just thank you again for jumping on and for staying all the way through. I would say, watch the film again. Watch it in your home. Show it to your kids or show it to anybody that has kids. Also, I think it's also a good way to motivate kids and to show them, show them something that maybe they'll learn from. And I would say if y'all know anybody that can benefit from watching this film, whether it's like this, whether it's in person or some type of screening at a school, university, anything like that, for lawyers, even lawyers too can learn from this, or anybody, please reach out to any of us. I work I'm with Represent Justice on this, so we'll do it together. But all of us will be happy to do this again with someone else. Share this. If you go to YouTube, like it, put comments on it. Tell us how you feel about it in the channel. And other than that, I just and also we put our contact information on the chat boxes of all of us. So just reach out to us, follow us, and share this, and maybe share what you thought about today watching it, and just share it and be like, look, I watched this film. I encourage everybody else to watch it. Just put it out there more. Put it out there more, and let us know if you want to collaborate on screenings. And yeah, thank you so much again for having me here today and for sitting down on this together. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And my only call to action is just this reminder that bureaucracies move really slow, laws take a long time to change, and that as a village that we sometimes have to operate outside and find ways to get in there and just make our impact without the powers that be. That's what it's probably going to have to take, and to just step up as a community and to do as much as we can outside of the system as well.
Thanks, y'all. I just wanted to thank Kent and Kyndra again for sharing so much of themselves. It was so beautiful to watch the film get made and then to watch y'all share it out in the world. I've dropped the film link in the chat again, as well as Represent Justice's website and social information if y'all want to stay connected. We have some really amazing ambassador films coming down the pipeline in a couple of months. And if you go on our YouTube channel, you can watch the other film that Kent co-produced with us, which tells a different aspect of a story. It's pretty amazing. It's a beautiful animated film. But thank you so much for y'all's time.
Maine, I wanted to give you the opportunity if you wanted to share anything before we hop off.
Well, the one thing I do want to share is just thank you. Thank you so much for your time today, Kent, as well as Kyndra. This has been amazing. Love being in spaces where we can learn how we can better advocate for our youth, how we can better work together as a village. And so I'm very thankful for that opportunity. So thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you. Again, I'll just echo what everyone said. Thank you, Kent. Thank you, Kyndra. It was good to view the film again, and we'll do all that we can to share it. So yes, so thank you all, and I hope everyone has a good night.
Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. Be safe.